All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Jermell Charlo and Terence Crawford's potential move to 154 pounds to challenge him for his titles up there. Let's talk about that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Before I get into the subject matter of the video though, please make sure that you support our betting partners at busr.ag/Fanon. Use the promotional code Fanon, and when you deposit $10 into the wager, you will get an additional $150 credited to you. So take advantage of that. Also, thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. All right, so this is about Terence Crawford and Jermell Charlo. There's rumors out there, people talking to me about Terence Crawford potentially moving up to 154 pounds to get a fight with Jermell Charlo, ostensibly because Terence Crawford is not going to be able to get the fight with Errol Spence Jr. at 147 pounds. He's not, the PBC through Tim Smith has said that they, didn't even want to make an offer to Terence Crawford for that fight. So there's not much else that Terence Crawford can do. And so Terence Crawford is rumored to be trying to move up to 154 pounds and potentially fight Jermell Charlo up there. Now, I came across, there's several things that I had heard before that Jermell Charlo was interested in fighting Terence Crawford, or would be willing to fight Terence Crawford, because, Terence Crawford, is too expensive for Errol Spence Jr. So, maybe he can move up there and get 50-50 with Jermell Charlo in a big pay-per-view up there. But then I was forwarded an interview on my DM. Shout out to my guy that shot that to me in the DMs, where Jermell Charlo is being asked that question. And he says pretty explicitly, like, look, Terence Crawford moving up here is not going to be skipping the line. Everybody wants to get up here and fight me. If he wants to fight somebody like a Danny Garcia or somebody like that, those guys can fight each other, and then the winner of whoever he fights can come up and fight me, right? So in that particular interview, did not sound that, enthused about fighting Terence Crawford. So look, this is what I think about the scenario. Terence Crawford is in a very, very hard situation. And in fact, he very well may be in a Gary Russell Jr. type of situation, at this point in time in his career, where, he's the WBO mandatory for, not the WBO mandatory, forgive me. He's the WBO champion. And, but he's not somebody that a lot of people are going to be looking towards to fighting, because he's not somebody that is really a particularly big draw. And he's somebody that is very, very likely to beat you. So, as far as Terence Crawford going up there to 154 pounds, if the PBC is not willing to make a fight with him with Errol Spence Jr., I'm not quite sure why, the same people would be, amped to make a pay-per-view fight between himself and Jermell Charlo. Also, there's the issue with the money for Terence Crawford and Terence Crawford's pride, right? Where Terence Crawford, if he goes to fight Jermell Charlo, I don't even know if he would be willing to fight Jermell Charlo for 50-50, even though Jermell Charlo, if they do make that fight, would be the undisputed champion, at that point in time. So, because he has a fight with Brian Castano coming up. I do believe it's either in March or April that the fight with Brian Castano is going to be made. Now, there's also no guarantee that Jermell Charlo is going to win the Brian Castano fight, even though I have him favored to win. It just looks like, and then there's, if Brian Castano is the undisputed champion, there's Errol Spence Jr. is also talking about moving up to 154 pounds. If Errol Spence Jr. moves up to 154 pounds, you can better believe that Errol Spence Jr. is going to get a Brian Castano fight before Terence Crawford does. And more than likely, he's going to get shots at many of those belts at 147 before Terence Crawford does, because of the fact that he's a pay-per-view draw and Terence Crawford is not, man. Personally, I just don't think that there's too many ways out of this scenario for Terence Crawford, as far as getting the big fights that he wants to get. other than doing things that he says that he is not willing to do, which is to work with the PBC, man. And because the PBC has got that 147 pounds on lock, they've got 154 pounds on lock. The nearest weight class that Terence Crawford, I think, could probably make fights and have people be willing to fight him is at 160 pounds. And that is because of the size of Terence Crawford moving that far up in weight. You know, guys like Gennady Golovkin or somebody like that who would have just such a tremendous size advantage over Terence Crawford might be willing to fight him at that point in time. You know, but, you know, it just doesn't look good for Terence Crawford in these fights, man, because of the relationship between Terence Crawford and the PBC. I don't know what Terence Crawford's going to do. I hold out hopes, though, that the Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford fight can be made. You know, maybe if Jermell Charlo, you know, is very insistent about defending his belts at 154 pounds, maybe Terence Crawford can go up and immediately become the WBO mandatory. The WBO mandatory for him. And I do believe that the WBO mandatory for that belt should be coming up pretty soon, because Brian Castano has a mandatory, but the mandatory for the WBO is being postponed so that he can have that the undisputed fight. So, you know, if Jermell Charlo wins and beats Brian Castano, which I think he'll do, then, you know, that mandatory for the WBO may come upon Jermell Charlo. But there's already, I do believe, somebody named as the WBO mandatory in that, you know, for Brian Castano. And those guys were already in a negotiation about having a fight. So, you know, just the whole thing to me seems very, very muddled for Terence Crawford to get anything out of any shot at those belts at 154 other than through a voluntary title defense. And a voluntary title defense, again, would be them needing to negotiate with Al Haymon, needing to negotiate with the PBC. And that is even if it is Brian Castano, because Brian Castano is also an Al Haymon fighter, man. You know, so, you know, I don't know, man. This the stubbornness of Terence Crawford is interesting to me, because the guy could easily go and cut a deal and work with Al Haymon if he wanted to. But, you know, having listened to Bernie the Boxer and different people out of his camp and the attitude that those guys have about the PBC, it just seems to me that, look, they would rather just, you know, rather buck it up and retire, you know, versus, basically not box it up and retire before they would be willing to acquiesce anything to the PBC, sign with them, or do anything like that. It's just, and all of it is just an absolute shame to me, man, because as boxing fans, we really are missing out on tremendous fights. Now, obviously, like Bernie the Boxer said in an interview that he did, Terence Crawford is a rich man and can afford to do whatever he wants to do. If he doesn't want to ever fight again, he doesn't have to fight again. But as a boxing fan, man, I'm telling you, I think that would be a shame. I really want to see these fights, but I just don't know how those things are going to take place short of some type of miracle. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.